Hello everyone and welcome back to Assorted Australian Politics. I'm Nick and today we're going to be taking a look at what I think at the next New Zealand general election and just trying to get a bit of a look at what's going on politically over there, because despite being our neighbours here in Australia, no one really knows what goes on in New Zealand politics. So currently they are under a national-led government, so essentially they're equivalent to the Liberals, led by Christopher Luxon, who I think was actually the CEO of Air New Zealand. For those of you who are into the aviation space, opposition is Labor, which is pretty much just Labor, under Chris Hipkins, who actually served as Prime Minister very briefly in 2023. And then there's the other minor parties, which under New Zealand's, I'll be honest, strange electoral system, where you basically get two votes, one for your electorate and one for just nationwide. Minor parties do matter a lot more, and majority governments are very rare. I think the only majority government in New Zealand history was 2020, height of COVID. Jacinda Ardern was Prime Minister. So realistically, the Greens are pretty much just standard Greens that you find in most major countries these days. ACT are kind of libertarian, I feel. I don't know if there's a really great equivalent other than just pretty much straight up libertarians in Australia. New Zealand First, I've heard a few comparisons comparing them to something like the DLP or Katter Australia, as in they're kind of socially right-wing but kind of left-wing economically, which I don't know much about New Zealand politics or New Zealand First, so I'm going to have to take their word for it. Then Te Pāti Māori, from what I've heard, is a party that's very much focused on Māori rights. I mean, we saw the big protest, the haka that they did in Parliament about a year ago and the other day. So they clearly have a very big focus on Māori rights. So realistically, as previously mentioned, the only way to realistically form a government in New Zealand is to coalition up. So I think the current government, so obviously led by the Nationals under Christopher Luxon, Prime Minister, as I've already said, but I think they have ACT and New Zealand First in their pocket as well to help them reach the magic majority, whereas Labor would be preparing to work with probably the Greens and Te Pāti Māori to try and get into government. Now, looking at opinion polling, it's very much a mixed bag. So the graphical summary is, so Labor are just getting ahead when we factor in all other parties. Minor parties are fairly steady. There's a pretty solid uptick in support for New Zealand First, but that's about it. A little bit of a hump a few months ago for Te Pāti Māori. I imagine that was around when there was the treaty protests in New Zealand. So yeah, it's fairly okay. Labor have got a little bit of a lead, but I wouldn't have thought that would have been enough to guarantee them a government, because as previously mentioned, as I've mentioned multiple times now, New Zealand's system is weird. So what I want to go down to is not the preferred Prime Minister, we'll get to that in a minute, or that is this, the forecasts that the New Zealand media have been creating. So they've basically been calculating with the electorate seats and the list seats to try and work out who would form a government. So it was very much, so it was kind of a mixed bag, kind of leaning towards National, ACT and New Zealand First, with the occasional win for Labor Greens Māori. And then they took the lead and were very dominant, but the most latest one, which was a few days ago, has got National, ACT and New Zealand First in first position. So in terms of predictions, I don't know. But I'm not here to make a prediction because these numbers are so confusing and you have to account for so much. Just to get a look at how confusing numbers are, I'm going to go to the results from the 2020 election. So this was massive. This was in the midst of, as I've previously mentioned, Jacinda Ardern leading Labor, massive landslide, very popular internationally and in New Zealand. So I'm just going to have a look at the list seats here. So on the list seats, National is on 10 in a massive wipeout landslide. In 2023, which we saw National ACT and New Zealand First gain government, they won 5. So in terms of list seats, I have no idea. And in terms of constituencies, individual constituency seats, I also have no idea, because I think a lot of New Zealand politics relies so much on those list seats. There isn't really like any sort of pendulum or anything to really work out which way the individual seats are going to go. And it's not even like I can try and work out which ones are swing districts and which ones aren't, because the only 2 elections I've got here on this website is I've got a strong national shift in 2023 and massive Labour landslide in 2020. So I haven't got a lot to work off. If I had a little bit more, maybe I would be able to make a prediction, but I'm just not able to at this point. But if I had to guess, and this is not reading very much into it, if I had to just make a guess, I would say that Labour would probably be in with the best shot on these numbers. I think they would, if this keeps up, they probably would win against every other party. It would just be forming government that I think would be their problem. The Greens are doing fairly steady. They've declined a little bit, but not that much. And they're starting to rebound a little. Te Pāti Māori had the big hump here, but they've flatlined a little bit. ACT has gone down. Well, on the right-wing side, ACT has gone down, but New Zealand First is up a hell of a lot. And honestly, I think if both of these trends keep up, it could be a race between New Zealand First and the Greens for the 3rd spot. And I think whoever wins that I think if New Zealand First win that, then Nationals are going to have a massive advantage. If Greens win that, then Labour's probably going to have a better shot at forming government. The other thing I'd like to talk about a little bit is preferred Prime Minister. Now, I did allude to this earlier, but Christopher Luxon has gone down massively here. He started off, I don't know what to take from these, given that if this was Australia and you had someone who's just been elected Prime Minister and they have 30% on preferred Prime Minister, that's abysmal. And you wonder, how did they win? But in New Zealand, with so many other little parties, then I guess that's good. Because anyway, no matter how you look at it, that's a slump. Chris Hipkins gone up, but still not great. He is preferred Prime Minister in a lot of these, especially some of the recent ones, although it does seem to flip-flop a little bit. So who knows if that'll really play into any sort of role. To his credit, he consistently has positive satisfaction, whilst Luxon does not. David Seymour's not having a good time at all, and Winston Peters is not as bad, but still not great. There's only one here with him with a positive satisfaction rating, and it's still better than British politics. And majority of the country seems to think that it's going in the wrong direction, although I think that's a fairly universal trend, no matter which country, no matter which party's in government. So either way, I don't think this is very conclusive. So final takeaway for what's going on in New Zealand politics: government isn't swimmingly popular. I don't know how much Labour would be, how prepared Labour would be to form government again, nor if they will. Minor parties doing well. New Zealand First, so essentially, as previously mentioned, essentially Katter almost is doing well, but the key thing here is 19th is December 2026. So this is still over a year away. Plenty can change. I know that about a year before our federal election here in Australia, it was very much tipped to be very close hung parliament, possible Liberal win, who knows, and what ended up is the biggest Labor landslide since 1946. So who knows? Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you soon.